We're going to go through today's lesson in point form. Welcome, my name is VRamgulam. We'll be discussing what we had covered in our last lesson, and continuing from there, we will be moving on to the first point, which is squash and stretch with examples. And number two is going to be keyframes and in-betweens and how they would apply to this lesson. Number three is going to be a student example of the exercise, and we're going to end off with point number four, which is your lesson requirement for handling this lesson's task. It's going to be a fun lesson. Let's get started. In our previous lesson, we've done the 5 basic facial expressions, mainly using the eyes, the eyebrows, and the mouth. We've added in some squash and stretch to make those expressions pop a little. Now, going forward, let's do part two of this lesson. In this lesson, we will be making our faces move. So let's talk about squash and stretch on the face. We'll start by drawing a face in its relaxed state, and we're going to start to squash this face, which means that it will no longer be normal. We're going to add in surprise, and we're going to throw those facial features out a little bit more. And to accommodate this new shape, we're going to elongate the shape of this face so that it looks longer, which really helped to make it look like this character is surprised. And now that's to stretch the face. Now to squash the face, we're going to shut the eyes and the mouth, and we're going to keep that squishiness, that rubberiness of the jaw, so that we don't lose any volume, and that really looks cool. Look at that. Okay, now moving on. So let's discuss keyframes and in-betweens. Keyframes are the important drawings that are used to tell a story. In-between drawings are the drawings that you will need to make your sequence move. The more in-betweens you add in, the smoother and slower the movement will be. So if we're going to have a ball that is going to be, say, somewhere here on screen, the ball is going to be hitting a wall which is here, then these two drawings are the keyframes. This would be a keyframe, and this drawing would be a keyframe. Now, you would not mark them as keyframes on the drawing itself, but on the pages with those drawings, you will mark it at the bottom left or bottom right of the page. You may even mark it on the upper left or right of the page, as long as you are consistent with where you're going to be marking that. Let's just discuss exactly why you need in-between drawings. I'm going to create an animated sequence right now. Bring in my timeline, and just to make things a little bit clearer, I think I'm going to color in the ball. So now that I've colored the ball in, and I have my two keyframes, I'm going to create an animated sequence to show you why you would need in-betweens. So in the first frame, I have the ball in its starting position, and if I add in my last frame, that does not look good, right? It's just the ball flashing from one place to the next. And even if I slow this down, that's all the ball does, is it moves from one part of the screen to the other part where it starts and stops. But this could just be the ball flashing, right? It doesn't give you any indication that the ball is actually moving. So for this to happen right now, you would have to create in-between drawings, which means you'll have to draw this ball a second time which will have to be a bit closer to where it needs to be, because we know our ball needs to be right here on the right hand side of the screen. So every time we draw the ball, we're going to need to draw the ball getting closer and closer and closer to the wall. All right, so you've got 1, 2, 3, and remember the more in betweens you've drawn, the faster. I'm so sorry. The more in betweens you've drawn, the slower the sequence will be, but the smoother the sequence will be, which is very, very cool. So now that I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, let's make it 10. Boom. So I have 10 drawings right now, and when I put them together, so on frame number 1, the ball is going to be over there. In frame number 2, the ball is going to be a little bit closer, and this is how animation works. Every time you redraw the ball, it has to be moving in a different place. Now, I know what you're thinking. We're animating a face. So what does a ball have to do with a face? This is a basic example of why you would need to know what keyframes and in-betweens are before you even add that onto the face. Now, each one of these frames that I've created, if you would imagine that they were all drawn on different pages, that would really help. And final frame, boom. Now if we hit play, you see the ball moving across the screen exactly the way we want it. And I'm just going to speed this up right now. And hit play. Now this is not taking into account gravity and bounce and stuff. Cool. So how would you identify what a keyframe is and what an in-between is? Some people say it's the first and the last drawing of an animated sequence. Generally, that may not be true because it's a little bit more complex than that. But let me show you which are the keyframes here. Now, keyframes are the important drawings that would show the movement, that would tell a story, so that what's happening on screen would be clear even without the in-between drawings to make it smooth. So in this sequence right now, this first drawing right here, this is a key. And let's just get another color. Cool. And thankfully for us, the final drawing, which is right here, this is also a key drawing. So every drawing that goes from one key to the next, every single one of these drawings that I'm dropping down a line from, these drawings are all in-betweens. Now do not mark them off as in-betweens and keyframes like this. Always use numbers, and you can either use those numbers at the top of the screen or the bottom of the screen. Here I'm going to give you an example, like on the bottom left of the screen. If this is drawing number 7, here's where you'd number it at the consistently on one corner of the page, and you are going to either circle that number or underline that number. Now, here's why there is a difference for that. You can go to almost any studio and they would know how to identify which drawing is a key drawing and which drawing is an in-between without having to spend long hours analyzing each drawing or the entire sequence. So all keyframes have a circle around the number, the way I've done around this K drawing. So this last drawing over here, this would also be circled because they're both keyframes. In between drawings are identified with underlines, like so. Okay, so I guess because of the importance of the keyframes, they have circles, and if they're less important, they will be underlined with no circle. So if this was sequence, this sequence had first drawing number 1. On the left hand side, you would go and number that drawing and circle it. And when you're doing drawings numbers, let's just say there are 2 in between drawings. So drawings number either 2 or 3 will be underlined with no circle. And so if drawing number 1 is a keyframe and drawing number 2 and 3 are in-betweens, that means drawing number 4 will be a keyframe, which will have to be identified with a circle. Okay, awesome. So let's move on to the next part. So this, my friend, is how you would use keyframes and in-betweens for your animated sequence in this facial expressions exercise. So you will start off with one expression, and I'm just going to draw a character, little potato type of character. And I'm going to draw a reverse C shape for the nose. And here's his mouth. Let's undo the hair. I just want to step away from drawing any details for this demonstration. So that's my first keyframe, right? Now the next keyframe, or the next extreme, that's another word that you're going to hear. Sometimes a keyframe is referred to as an extreme, right? So I've lightened this down. The reason I've lightened down the drawing is imagine you're putting on a new page on a lightbox. Now, why would you put on a new page on a lightbox? It's because you want to change the expression and even the shape of the face somewhat, but you still want it to look like the same character. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open up this guy's eyes like a lot wider. And I'm using a graphics tablet and I'm not being as accurate as I should be, but you guys can totally be more accurate than I'm being right now. So here guys, let me show you. I've done 2 expressions. I've done a basically nonchalant, aloof expression, and I've done an expression where this guy is a little bit more um, awake and a little bit unhappy. So if we go through the sequence and just make a little animation. Oh, too fast. Again, it looks like a blinking sign, just flashing. Now you can see the cool things that's happening here. Firstly, the pupil and iris of the character is getting larger. Um, Maybe I should draw in that's upper eyelid in the second drawing with the larger pupil and iris. You'll see the eyebrows are being lifted on purpose. It shows more interest, and the mouth is dropping lower and also getting wider, as if he's "Ugh," like really feeling it in his neck. You know, when your mouth like stretches wider but still being closed. So let me just add in that line. Hopefully that's I think I'm going to leave out the line completely. So here's how in-betweens work, right? So you've got both your drawings, and you might want to go onto the light box. Now, the reason I say you might want to go onto the light box is because you want to change expression number one, which is this guy, and eventually make it turn into that, right? So I want to see exactly where I am and where I need to be. So you take on a new page, and please, 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 just remember to always number your drawings. So this drawing is going to be drawing number 1, I guess, and that's a keyframe. And this bad boy right there is going to be drawing number, I don't know, 6. You guys okay with 6? Nah, let's go with 7. Nah, let's go with 5. Okay, so this guy is drawing number 5, and this guy is a keyframe as well. So here's what I want to do. I want to eventually have this guy change, but I can see the size of the pupil and the iris, and now I'm just making it a little bit larger. And that eyebrow, which is over here, I'm just going to lift it up a little bit. This eyelid, I would also lift up just a little bit as well. Yeah, that nose. Now this mouth, here's the cool thing, right? The mouth, when you look at it this way, it's a very, very simple thing to do, to animate, because all you're doing is you're just making these small changes to each individual part, and it's all going to make sense when you play it. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to outline the face. It would have been so easy if I just made a layer with the shape of the face, but I'm not going to do that because when you're going to be doing this on paper, you will have to trace out the shape of the face the same way I'm drawing the face over and over again. So this is going to be drawing number 2. So drawing number 2, right there, and I'm going to underline that. No circle for an in-between drawing. Now, is it necessary for me to have drawing number 1, 2, and 5 all on the light box when I'm drawing? And the answer is no. The reason why the answer is no is because I've already moved it one drawing closer to the next keyframe. So I'm going to remove drawing number 1, and I'm going to be keeping drawing number 2 as my last save point, which I've created to get closer to drawing number 5, or closer to the next keyframe. So let's go to drawing number 3, and the first thing I'm doing is I'm doing my labeling or my numbering on the bottom of that page. And now I'm going to go even closer, starting with the eyes. I'm going to make the pupils even bigger than what I did in the previous drawing. So it's getting closer to that large shape that we created. And here's my eyelid. So I'm going to lift up that eyelid a little bit. Here's the other eyelid. I'm going to lift that eyelid up. And here's the eyebrow. Now that eyebrow is a little bit darker, the last one that we've done. And number 5, the final keyframe, is a bit lighter. So from here, I'm not going to move it all the way up here. That's going to be like really rushing it. I've still got like 2 more drawings or so to get there. So I'm going to lift up that eyebrow a little bit. I'll draw the nose and the mouth, which we've extended. We're going to drop it even lower, say around here, and we're going to stretch that shape out just a little bit more, but not going to that drawing number 5 mouth just yet. So I'm happy with that. Oh my gosh. So I've taken that drawing away, and guess what happened? Now I've noticed that I did not draw the outline of this face. So here's the outline. And here's something that's not going to be cool. This does not work in a lot of cartoons. It may work in a cartoon that I've seen just a few episodes of called Ed, Edd and Eddy. But in any other cartoon, it does not work because we are not being consistent with the outline, meaning I'm not tracing it out as accurately as I'm supposed to. The lines are going to be a little bit wobbly for the shape of the face, and no, that is not a good effect. So drawing number 3 was the last one we've got. Ooh, we've got one more in between to do until we get to the keyframe. Okay, so let's get started. The first thing I want to do is label this or number it. So this is drawing number 4. And I want to underline that because it is an in-between and not a keyframe. When you're in the animation field, you'll find that a lot of people start shortening the words, and they call them keys and tweens. Instead of saying keyframes and in-betweens, they say keys and tweens. So here, I'm just going to extend or increase the size of this character's eye to be very close to drawing number 5. And here's the thing now. In drawing number 5, this guy doesn't have upper eyelids showing, so I'm going to have to just thin that out. I'm making really thin upper eyelids, and I'm hoping that because I'm thinning it out, when it totally disappears in the next drawing, it would not be too much of a problem. So the eyebrow, oh my gosh. So the eyebrow, both the eyebrows. I'm lifting it up so you see it between drawing number 3, which is down here, and drawing number 5, which is up there. Next, I'm going to be drawing the nose, and finally the mouth. I'm drawing the mouth in somewhere in the middle of drawings numbers 3 and 5. So I'm stretching the mouth out a little bit more, but not as much as the final drawing is stretched out. And here I'm going to be drawing the face. So I think we did pretty cool so far. I'm going to increase the opacity to all of these drawings so that you see them all at their darkest. And we're going to see them as an animated sequence right now. So I'm going to create all of my frames. So drawing number 1, the first keyframe, will be followed by the in-between drawing number 2, and that'll be followed by the next in-between, which is drawing number 3, the second last drawing, which is in between number 4, and finally you've got the keyframe drawing number 5. So if you play this, you see the expression change, right? And just to make this a little bit more clearer, I'm gonna speed up the in-between drawings just a little bit, and I'm gonna hold the keyframes on screen just a little bit longer. Haha, how's that? So that's how you get a change of facial expressions with keyframes and in-betweens. Here we're going to look at an example done by a student. This is the same exercise you will be attempting, in which you will create 3 different facial expressions as keyframes, and then proceed with creating the in-betweens to make the movement smooth. So this learner had started off with a front view of a fairly straightforward looking face, and then in drawing number 2, or the second keyframe, this learner had moved the face to the left. But he didn't just move the face to the left, he moved it to the left, but look at the eyes, the direction of the eyes, and the mouth and the eyebrows. Now clearly this character is leaning away from something, and this character is fearful. This character is scared of something. And this is exactly what I want you to do. Not in terms of copying this guy's expression, but I want you to have your character react to something, because all of our drawings and all of our moving drawings are going to be used to tell stories. So to get our characters to feel real, our characters need to look as if they are thinking, they are constantly processing, they are constantly feeling, and changing their feelings, their opinions, and any other thoughts as the story is progressing. So this character is leaning backward in fear, and in the final keyframe number 3, or drawing number 3, the character is a little bit upset. So the character is looking at us. Drawing number 2, or frame number 2, the character leans backward or away from whatever he's looking at, in a bit of fear and surprise, and then he leans in toward something, but now he's clearly aggressive. So what could have happened? I don't know, but I'm so glad that the student had been thinking of this as part of a story, and it makes me even question exactly what was this guy reacting to? What's the story? What happened before this? What happened after that? Was this guy scared by something, and he realized that his friend was playing a prank on him? So he got a bit upset about it. He can't take a joke. I don't know, but this is cool. Now that you know what the keyframes look like, let's have a look at how the sequence looks with the in-betweens put in. Okay, I have the in-between drawings set up in the sequence as well, and we know that from frame number 1, which is our keyframe, the character is going to start to slowly move toward the next keyframe, which is leaning backward toward the left of the screen. And let's look at this, how this was structured so far. So this learner has got this right. He's got the first expression down, and at the bottom left hand side of the page, he has the number 1 because he numbered his drawing, and he circled it, which lets us know that that is a keyframe drawing. So let's look at drawing number 2 right now. Drawing number 2, the character looks as if he is closing his eyes, he's opening up his mouth, and his head is moving a little bit to the left, very little to the left. Now, this is very cool. I can clearly see that the head is moving ever so slightly. Now, the one thing that our learner had made a little bit of a forgetful mistake on is the numbering. If you look at the number 2 for the next drawing, this young person has circled number 2, which kind of indicates that this is a keyframe, although we know that it is not a keyframe. We only have 3 keyframes, and if we go to number 3, whoops, number 3 is also a keyframe. So clearly you cannot have a sequence of this exercise is 30 drawings. You cannot have 30 keyframes, right? So we've already set it up with 3 keyframes, and every other drawing that makes this animated sequence move smoothly would be in between drawings. So all in between drawings should be underlined and not circled. So drawing number 3, from drawing number 1 to drawing number 3, look at the eyes. He has progression of the eyes closing, the mouth opening, and this is very, very clever. If you look at this, here the mouth is fully closed in drawing number 1. In drawing number 2, the mouth is partly opened, but there are no teeth. In drawing number 3, as the mouth opens a little bit more, you start to see a really, really thin indication of the upper row of teeth, which is cool. And all the while, this character is moving ever so slightly more and more to the left. In drawing number 4, the character is not just moving to the left, now his head is rotating a little bit away from us. Drawing number 5, 6, 7, look at that. Progressively getting scared. So this is another important thing to realize. Although this character is getting scared or becoming afraid, he is not becoming afraid from drawing number 2 itself. You have to pace yourself, and as the sequence is going on, drawing number 2, 3, 4, from drawing number 5, this guy starts to get scared. So you do not have to be too immediate in terms of like changing the expression. These things can happen. And even drawing number 5, although this has a little bit of fear in the face, it's not as intense as frame number 7. So you can dial up the intensity just as you'd move up the volume on your television or your or any device. So drawing number 8, 9, drawing number 10. So you might see there's a 10.1, right? So how exactly does that work? How could there be a 10.1? And this is an important place for me to make mention of something called follow through and overlap animation, right? So follow through and overlap will happen to any loose parts uh, or anything loose that is attached to the character. That could be clothing, it could be fat, it could be uh, apparel, it could be even hair. And in this case, it is this character's hair. Now, if you look at drawings number 1 to 10, the guy is moving all the way to the left, but I instructed the learner to add in some follow through and overlap into the sequence. So when this guy stops at drawing number 10, I told the learner to hold the drawing in that position and allow the hair to overlap. So when this guy stops moving, the hair continues to move. So check this out. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And look at this. Now that he stopped moving, look at his hair flop over to the other side of his head. Did you see that, Jimmy? Look at that. So the hair sets on the other side of the head. And now moving on a little bit faster. Once we've got drawings number 10.1 to 10.5, so I asked the learner to add in 5 more drawings to overlap. So drawings number 11 going forward is going to be moving on to the next keyframe, which is actually our final keyframe. So the face rotates and goes closer to the right, and he gets angry. Now look at that. Don't just focus on rotating the head, but look at the expression. Let's mention one thing. Let's look at the mouth, right? Look at this guy's mouth. Open mouth. You see one set of teeth, which is just the upper set. Then as he's starting to get more angry, you start to see the lower set. And now in the next drawing, in drawing number 20, you get to see more of the upper set and the lower set, but they're coming closer together because they're going to kind of clench. He's going to bite down onto in anger. Drawing 21, now the teeth are clenched. And let's have a look at this sequence moving. And finally, here are your lesson requirements for today's exercise. Let's go with 20. Okay, let's keep it at 20 frames as your sequence for now. So for this animated sequence, you are required to do 3 keyframe drawings. So the 3 keyframes means that you will have to draw 3 different expressions on one character. I would prefer it if you have your character move a bit on screen so that it seems a little bit more uh, exciting to look at, and there's a bit of movement in the sequence instead of all the expressions being animated in the same place. The next thing you need to do after your 3 facial expressions are approved, you will have to do 17 in between drawings which will make up the total of 20 frames. Now, before you start your in-between drawings, please email your 3 keyframe drawings to me, and once I give you the go ahead, then you may begin doing your 17 in-between drawings. The next thing you'll have to do is you'll have to identify your frames as either keyframes or in-between drawings, or as I've written here, keys and tweens, by either adding in a circle or an underline on the numbers. And it's important to note that the sequence should be done in landscape format. Landscape is the format that is used for film and television. Okay, let me show you an example. So I'm going to come up with an imaginary scenario, right? So in this imaginary scenario, let's assume that somewhere over here, there's some kind of scary monster. Maybe it's a shark. And this shark is ready to have a little bite. Meaning this shark is about to eat our character up. And our poor character is on screen. Now this shark is going to stay out of the frame, so we'll only be drawing what's in this semi-rectangular shape. Similar to the other students' work, we are focusing only on the expression of our character and not what he is reacting to. So this shark right here would basically be outside of the drawing. We're going to keep that a mystery, right? So it would be good if you design your 3 keyframes and you make your animated sequence. So instead of going the way the other student did, and this student whose work we've analyzed, we've had drawing number 1 in the middle, and then the character had moved all the way to the left as if he were shocked or afraid of whatever he'd seen. And in this scenario here, it would make sense that our character would be shocked or afraid because there's a shark about to have him for dinner. But not taking him to a restaurant or anything, just wants to kill him. And drawing number 3. Drawing number 3 is where the learner had got the character to be a bit more aggressive, leaning forward. Now that would not work in this situation because there's a shark about to eat this guy. So here's what I've done wrong here. I have done wrong by underlining the numbers because I'm working out my keyframes, right? The second thing that you should not do is you should not draw the numbers on the heads here, because especially in this sequence, the head is one of the most important parts because that's where you're going to draw the expressions. Now, let's do a different example just to show you that you don't have to go backward and then go forward, which is very cool if you need to do anticipation. But let's start it off as if our character were right here all the way, yeah, on the left of the screen. So this is going to be drawing number 1. And drawing number two, let's just have a character. Get a little bit surprised. But what would make him surprised? Let's work it out. Let's have this guy. Maybe he's short-sighted, so now he put on a pair of glasses, right? So now he knows what he's looking at. He put on his glasses, and now his expression has changed because he's like, "Ooh, it's a shark." And then, oh, let's just make note of that. That's drawing number two. And no underline. It needs to be circled. And here's the tough thing, right? The tough thing is that you are labeling these as drawings numbers 1, 2, and 3, but between these, you're going to be adding in drawings. So if you're going to name this keyframe number 2, you can't have like a number 2 in between and a number 3 in between and number 4 in between. And then you have a number 2 keyframe because people wouldn't know exactly where this keyframe is from 1, 2, 3, 4, and then you go back to 2. What if they put your keyframes 1 and 2 together and then they put numbers 2, 3, 4 as the in-betweens after? Right, so it would be a nice idea to at least have some understanding as to how many drawings you intend to use. So then you can actually say, okay, this is drawing number 1. Then the next keyframe is going to be keyframe drawing number 10. So now you know that between numbers 1 and 10, you've got in-betweens 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 9. So you've got that many keyframes to smoothen out the movement from here for the head to appear all the way there. Alright, and the final keyframe is maybe this guy. This guy with the glasses, now he has a little bit of a strange expression. I know that's a really weird smile, right? But maybe this guy's hungry too, and he's so hungry he could eat a whale or a shark. So now I've got our keyframes. Whoopsie, wrong color. So I've got our keyframes, and it's kind of telling a story. And even if you block out the shark right now, you can see that from frame numbers 1 to 10 to 20, this guy does not know what's happening, and then he puts on his spectacles, and he's a little bit taken in by what he sees, and eventually he gets excited because now he thinks that he's gonna have a meal as well. And once you're done with these three keyframes, then again you will have to go in and do the in-betweens to get them from one drawing to the next. Now, guys, I hope you had fun with this demonstration. Now, go to it and let's get started with the work. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. Okay, so keep well, stay safe, and I will see you next week. Bye.